Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. This one is going to be a fun one because we're going to blow some stuff up with our grenade launcher and rocket launcher. So let us waste no time and get to those Michael Bay-esque explosions right now. All right. So let's go into our interfaces and let's go to BPI take damage. We're going to add a new function inside of this already existing interface, and we'll call this take radius damage. All right. Take radius damage is going to have two inputs. We're going to have one be a hit result because we always got to have that hit result. All right. And the other one's going to be just like before on enemy take damage. We want to get weapon stats. So let's get one of type weapon stats. Compile, save, close. Now let's go and open up our enemy. Let's go into the event graph and we can scroll on down to where we have some open space, and we want to call event take radius damage. Okay, so we already added this interface to this blueprint, so now we can just keep on pulling functions that exist inside of there. All right, so first things first, let's check and make sure that our character or our enemy is not dead. Don't want to be able to do what we're gonna do if they're dead. Out of hit result, we're gonna break it. Out of weapon stats, we're gonna break that. We're gonna start plugging some stuff into here. To do this, let's create a new function and let's say calculate radius damage. This is going to work a little bit differently than just calculate damage did. So we're going to add three different inputs. We're going to have one called damage. We're going to have one called impact radius, and then another one called impact point. And these are going to be float. Damage is a float. Impact radius is also a float. Impact point is going to be a vector. All right. Let's set damage to a local variable just for organizational purposes like before. Okay. Let's go ahead and get actor location. So we're getting the location of the enemy. Remember, target is self. It is this blueprint. It's not the character. We're going to take the impact point and we're going to subtract these. So vector minus vector. All right, and then we're going to get the length of this vector. And then we're going to divide this by a float, or this already is a float. We want to make sure this is on top, and we're going to divide that by the impact radius. All right, and then we're going to do a subtraction here, and we're going to grab this on the bottom, and then we're going to make this 1. So it's going to be 1 minus whatever the value of this math is, and this math is it's getting the actor, the enemy's location. It's taking whatever this impact point vector is. It's getting the length of those two things, how far they are apart, dividing it by whatever we set to be this radius, and then subtracting that. So like I said, most of the little math things in here, it's easy to get caught up on them, but a lot of these numbers and these calculations are figured out just through testing. So the fact that this is a class means you don't have to go through the tedium of doing that. So let's do a float. Times a float, we're going to multiply that by our damage. All right. And then what we want to do is we want to do something called clamping a float. The minimum we want to be 0. And the maximum we want to be able to do is whatever our damage is. So this is just saying like, this is preventing the damage that we apply to be greater than whatever we set the damages. So like if our rocket does 700 damage or something like that, even if this calculation results in a number bigger than 700, it'll clamp, it'll stop it from going over 700. All right, so let's add a return node, and we'll say radius damage applied or calculated radius damage or whatever, and this is going to be a float. Return plugin, and there we go. That's that. So now we can go back on over to our event graph, and if we're not dead, we can calculate radius damage. We have all these inputs, so let's plug damage into damage, impact radius into impact radius, and then our break hit result, there's going to be an impact point. You can see it right there, impact point into impact point. Like that. I know my nodes are pretty close together right now, but that's okay. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to run our health update. So the same one as before that we used up here when we were calculating that damage. So we'll pass that in. All right, then we want to check and make sure if we're dead or not. And then a lot of this is going to be the same. If we are dead, then we want to run enemy death. All right. The hit location is going to be this impact point. So that's where the impulse will fire off, and then we need to get a bone name. Hit bone name into bone name. Collapse that. Oh my gosh. It's a node party over here. Okay. So you got that. Okay. If we're not dead, then we want to run damage numbers. Okay. And we'll just plug that in like so. Impact location is going to still be impact point. Damage is still going to be the applied damage. Make sure it's the applied damage after the calculation occurs, not a before. And then we don't need his headshot. One thing that I might have done incorrectly, let me just comment box this first and say enemy takes damage from explosives or something like that. One thing that I might have done incorrectly initially in the take damage, the normal take damage, make sure that yours looks like this. Make sure that true is going up to death and then going down to damage numbers, and then false is going into damage numbers, and then damage numbers is leading to is valid. I might have had death going into here like that and then just skipping this. I'm not quite sure, but I might have done that. If I did, just make sure it looks, these 4 nodes look like that in this event enemy take damage part of the script like that. Okay, but that's all we need to do in the enemy. So now all of that is set up. So what we need to do is now go back into our projectile in our projectile base. And remember, we have this explode projectile function that's running in here. And so it doesn't do anything. So let's make it do something. So off of explode projectile, let's open up a sequence. This hit results. You know the drill. We're gonna break it, because we like to break things. And then what we'll do is let's get our weapon stats, and we're gonna break that. So we want to be able to get this impact radius. And we're going to do a node called, out of then 0, it's going to be sphere overlap actors. So this is drawing a sphere, and it's going to overlap, returns an array of actors that overlap the given sphere. So we're drawing a sphere, and then it's returning with whatever, like a bunch of actors that overlap that sphere. So how big's the sphere going to be? Well, it's going to be whatever we set to be our impact radius. What's the position of the sphere? It's going to be the impact point. It's going to be where our projectile hits something. Okay, so just like before, we need to give it object types to overlap and then ones to ignore. So out of here, let's make an array. An array is just like an array of things, like multiple things. A list? I don't even know. An array is like a normal word, I feel like. We're going to want to check what is world dynamic and what is pawn. So that's our enemy, and then like, you know, other things in the world. Because our enemy's world dynamic. All right, so that's what it'll overlap. And then let's grab the player and let's get the current weapon. All right, and then let's plug that into actors to ignore, and that'll make its own little array. These are the actors that we don't want. We don't want our sphere to say it's overlapping with our weapon. All right, that wouldn't be good. That would create some confusion. Out of our out actors, we're going to do a for each loop. All right, plug in the execution. And then out of loop body, we want to say take radius damage. Weapon stats is going to be weapon stats in here. Hit result, you can probably guess, is going to be this hit result. Plugging it in, and that's all we need to do. For the array element, we're going to plug that into target though. All right. So the last thing is we want to spawn an actor from class, and we want to do an explosion, but we haven't created that explosion effect, so we're gonna have to create that now. So we can just keep it in projectiles. Let's create a blueprint class, an actor, and call this explosion impulse or something like that. Doesn't have to be super complex of a name. All right, and then what we want to add to this is we want to add in, oh man, is it, this would be a radial force component. Just radial force, okay. And we'll call this explosion force. So this is gonna be our big old explosion, all right. So for the radius, let's make it like 400. You can change these however you want. Impulse, so, okay. So if you make the fall of constant, impulse is a constant strength. If you make it linear, then it'll be impulse gets weaker the further from the origin. So that's what we want. That's more realistic of like a real explosion. It's most powerful at that impact at the center. And then if you hit them from the outside, it won't do as crazy of things. Object types to effect, let's just do world dynamic and physics body. We can we just get rid of these? We can get rid of these couple ones because we're not even using them. Impulse strength, we can set that to be like 3000, whatever you want to do. And then in the event graph, all that we need to do is off of begin play. Let's grab our explosion force and say fire impulse. Okay, so whenever this blueprint is spawned into the world, it will fire off this impulse. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, so now I'm back in our projectile base. We can say always spawn, ignore collisions, which is pretty standard here when it comes to these things. And the class that we want is going to be explosion impulse. All right, and the spawn transform. Let's split it, because we only care about its location. So we'll make that the impact point. And then that is that. Okay, so that is that script. Stop projectile runs to here. That looks correct. So the only thing that we need to do is we need to create those projectiles in our blueprints. We need to make sure that we're set to its radius damage. Okay. So let's go into our grenade launcher one. All right, let's just use this as an example. So for our projectile mesh, I'm gonna make this 3 times the size, and I'm gonna say grenade launcher ammo, and there we go. There it is. We can make it maybe 4 times the size, make it a little bit bigger. Whatever you want to do, okay? Really doesn't matter. And I'm gonna add an extra component to this. And I'm gonna search for a particle system, and we'll call this trail FX, like that. And because there's one called grenade trail. So it'll actually shoot out a little smoky type of effect, I guess you want to call it. You'll see. For our projectile movement, these are the settings that I had. I had 3,500 for the initial and the maximum speeds. The gravity scale was pretty heavy. I want this to arc, so I'm going to set it to be 2. And then is dealing radius damage, we want to turn that on in this blueprint. The reason that is because we want it to run out of the explode projectile and not just like the normal take damage that the sniper rifle is doing. So fingers crossed. Here we go. We might not have slotted these in our blueprint. Let me just see. And we haven't. Okay, so we haven't actually told the game what to spawn. So for weapon stats, actually, let's go ahead. I don't know if the stats even matter, but for the impact effect, I think it does because we are spawning that in the projectile base. So the stats probably matter in the weapon, but the impact effect matters here. So let's go ahead and do grenade launcher impact effect. And then let me just go back to my grenade launcher weapon. And I'm just gonna open this up. So for projectile, this is important. We want to slot in projectile grenade launcher. That's the projectile we want to shoot out. For its weapon stats, let's just say the maximum value it can be is like 250. Let me check and see what I had before. Okay, so in the previous project, I had the damage at 150. So if you get hit right at the epicenter, it's going to do a lot of damage, and the impact radius of that sphere is going to be 500. All right. So this won't actually play a sound when it ejects because we haven't actually built that up yet. But let's just see if that fires. So there we go. It's shooting. If I shoot this, then we do get to blow people up. Now the hit impulse. Oh, that's an error that might show up sometimes. Don't worry about it. That just has to do with like destroying the capsule component and trying to interact with something. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what was that? The impulse or whatever? Kill impulse. Ooh, yeah. That's something that we want to mess with a little bit. So let's make this like 100,000, right? And send them flying. And I missed. Alright, so yeah, that all works. Alright, so in the next video, we will finish off the rocket launcher and the grenade launcher and just build those up, make sure that we're playing the animations and doing the last couple things that we want to do with those two weapons. But yeah, that's everything set in stone. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We are nearing the end of this class. Pretty crazy. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.